Hello, my dear friends. How are you doing? Hope you are having an amazing day and not having to deal with drama. Ready for new stories I have for you today? Let's go to the first one. And don't forget to listen to the end of the story, guys, to hear my insights. Enjoy the stories, and don't forget to like and subscribe. And of course, don't forget to leave a comment. I, 36 female, grew up in the shadow of my older sister, Emily, 38 female. From as early as I can remember, Emily had one goal in life, to marry rich. While other kids were dreaming about becoming astronauts or doctors, Emily was fantasizing about mansions, luxury cars, and designer clothes. She wasn't subtle about it either. By the time she was a teenager, she openly declared, "I'll never work a day in my life because my husband will take care of me." My parents would laugh it off, chalking it up to her being a dreamer. They never saw it as a problem, but even as a kid, I thought her mindset was odd. While Emily obsessed over wealth and status, I was the complete opposite. I found joy in simple things: reading, exploring nature, and building meaningful friendships. I valued love, trust, and mutual respect over material possessions. My parents always treated Emily's dreams as ambitious, and mine as naive. As we got older, Emily's fixation on wealth only grew. She wasn't interested in school or developing a career. She treated relationships like stepping stones to the life she wanted. Every boyfriend she dated was chosen based on his financial prospects. She'd dump anyone who didn't measure up without a second thought. Despite our differences, Emily and I were close in our younger years. I admired her confidence and determination, and I think she appreciated my quieter, steadier presence. But as we transitioned into adulthood, our values began to clash in ways that strained our relationship. While I pursued my degree and worked hard to establish a career, Emily focused entirely on finding her golden ticket. She frequented high-end social circles, attended events she had no genuine interest in, and made connections solely to meet wealthy men. Her life felt like one long audition for the role of a trophy wife. I chose a different path. I wanted a relationship built on trust and shared values, not financial convenience. That decision eventually brought Ryan into my life. In my early 20s, I met Ryan. Ryan came from an old money family, but his wealth wasn't what attracted me. I loved his sense of humor, his ambition, and his generous and kind heart. When I introduced Ryan to my family, I expected them to be happy for me. Instead, Emily's reaction was unsettling. She wasn't just interested in meeting Ryan, she was intensely interested. Her eyes lit up in a way that made my stomach twist, and she immediately began peppering him with questions about his family, his job, and their wealth. At first, I brushed it off as her being overly friendly and Emily being her typical self. But over time, her behavior became harder to ignore. As the months went on, I started noticing Emily inserting herself into my relationship with Ryan. She'd show up uninvited when Ryan and I were spending time at my parents'. She began attending events she wouldn't normally care about, conveniently running into Ryan without me. One day, I went to Ryan's apartment to surprise him, only to find Emily sitting on his couch. They weren't doing anything inappropriate, but the atmosphere was too intimate. My heart sank. Ryan confessed that he had been seeing Emily behind my back. Emily didn't deny it. Instead, she looked me straight in the eye and said, "I can't help it if I want more out of life." Her words hit me like a slap. She framed her betrayal as if it were logical, even justifiable, because Ryan's wealth made him a better match for her. I was devastated, not just because I had lost Ryan, but because I had lost my sister. Within a year, Emily and Ryan were married. I cut ties with both of them, unable to stomach what they did to me. The years that followed were some of the hardest of my life. Losing Ryan was painful, but losing Emily felt even worse. I kept replaying her words, wondering if she was right. Was I not good enough? Eventually, I realized their actions said more about them than they did about me. I threw myself into my career, surrounded myself with supportive friends, and slowly rebuilt my life. Then, in my early 30s, I met James. James was incredibly successful. He owns a major company. He was also humble, kind, and down to earth. His wealth was never something he flaunted. To him, it was just a byproduct of his hard work. We connected on a deeper level than I had ever experienced before. James valued me for who I was, not for what I could offer him. For the first time in years, I felt truly loved and appreciated. When James proposed, he gave me a vintage engagement ring that took my breath away. It wasn't just beautiful, it was thoughtful, reflecting everything he knew I loved. But then, 15 years after, mine and Emily's paths crossed again at a mutual friend's wedding. I hadn't seen her since she married Ryan, and I wasn't sure what to expect. As I mingled at the reception, I noticed Emily walking toward me. She looked different, still beautiful, but there was a sharpness to her demeanor that hadn't been there before. "Wow, is that really you?" she asked, her voice dripping with fake warmth. "Hi, Emily," I replied, keeping my tone polite but distant. We exchanged small talk for a few minutes. She asked if I was still single, her tone a mix of curiosity and judgment. Then her gaze dropped to my hand, where my engagement ring sparkled under the light. Her eyes widened, and I watched as she subtly scanned my jewelry and outfit, trying to assess its worth. Before she could say anything, James walked up with my drink. I smiled and said, "Emily, I'd like you to meet my husband." As soon as Emily saw James, her face went pale. At first, I thought she was just surprised to see me married. After all, she had just asked if I was still single. But then, a moment later, she asked James if he was the owner of X company, and when James said yes he is, she said that you must know my ex-fiance's name, because he works for you. Wow, surprise, surprise. Who would have ever thought that my husband is now my ex-fiance's boss? And it was impossible for someone like Emily, who's always hyper-aware of status and wealth, not to know who James was. I could practically see the gears turning in her head as she pieced it all together. My husband, the man standing casually beside me, was the person who ultimately held her husband's career in his hands. James, of course, was completely unaware of the history between Emily, Ryan, and me. He greeted Emily politely, offering a handshake and a friendly smile. "It's nice to meet you," he said, before excusing himself to grab a drink and chat with someone else. Emily stood there frozen for a moment, her usual poise replaced by something I'd never seen before: vulnerability. She recovered quickly, but her tone was different now, less confident, almost nervous. "You've done well for yourself," she said, forcing a smile. I couldn't resist. I laughed in her face and replied, "I guess we both have." Emily stood there frozen for a second before muttering something about needing a drink and walking away. I saw how uncomfortable our encounter made her. Part of me feels a little guilty for laughing at her discomfort, but another part of me sees it as karma coming full circle. So, Reddit. Am I the a-hole for laughing in my sister's face when she realized my husband is her husband's boss? OP's sister betrayed OP in one of the most painful ways possible, and she clearly hasn't changed a bit. Laughing in her face might not have been the most diplomatic response, but after what she put OP through, I'd say it was pretty restrained. It's not like OP orchestrated the situation. She just happened to find out the hard way that karma is real. OP should let her sit with the discomfort of knowing the tables have turned. And now let's hear the community's opinion. I can't imagine how hard it must have been to see her again after everything she did to you. Laughing might not have been the kindest reaction, but given the years of pain and betrayal she caused, I think it's understandable. This wasn't about being petty. It was about finally feeling vindicated. You've moved on and built a beautiful life for yourself, and if your sister can't handle seeing that, it's on her, not you. I'm leaning towards not the a-hole, but I can see how your laughter might have come across as harsh. It's clear you've been deeply hurt by Emily's actions, and I can't blame you for feeling some satisfaction in that moment. However, it might have been an opportunity to take the high road and show her you're truly above her pettiness. That said, she had it coming, so I understand why you reacted the way you did. Absolutely not the a-hole. Your sister betrayed you, married your fiance, and likely thought she won in life. Now she's confronted with the reality that her husband is working for your husband, and she can't handle it. Laughing in her face wasn't petty. It was cathartic. Let her sit with the consequences of her choices. You owe her nothing, not even politeness. For some background, I, 45 female, am an immigrant. For personal reasons, me and my 3 kids, 12 male, 10 male, 8 female, decided to move to the UK. While I was living there, I was lucky enough to obtain an excellent and well-paying job that has given me the opportunity to not only provide for me and my kids, but for my whole family back home as well. In other words, I live rather comfortably. It was just the 4 of us for the first couple of years, until my youngest sister, 21 female, Zoe, decided to move to the UK for university. Since I was her only relative here, we decided it would be best if she moved in with me so she could focus on her education. She has not paid for anything since she got here. I didn't make her pay rent or even groceries. I gave her a weekly allowance since she doesn't have a job. I pay for a majority of her schooling, The rest are paid for by my parents. I had even given her my old car, which I still pay gas for, so she wouldn't need to commute. Our parents do send her some money for other expenses besides university, but for the most part, I paid for everything. Now, our fight happened a few weeks ago, so I might have forgotten some details. I had a serious emergency at work and needed to leave ASAP. I would usually call my babysitter, but she wasn't available for the day, so I had no choice but to turn to Zoe. I begged her to watch them for at least 2 hours, but she declined, saying she didn't want to waste her weekend watching my kids. I was honestly frustrated but was going to let it go, until she said she'd babysit if I paid her. I couldn't stop myself from laughing at her face. I told her that she was selfish for asking me for more money after everything I've done for her, and that she was a witch for weaponizing my situation. She told me that I was being immature and that she had no obligation to help me. We got into a huge screaming match after that. It was so bad that it lasted for 2 days until I had enough and kicked her out. She is now living with a friend, and I am now providing financial aid for university only. We no longer have contact. I feel completely disrespected and used by her actions. Most of my family is on my side, except my dad and older sister. Though they don't agree with what she did, they think I'm overreacting by kicking her out. My sister also thinks that since I'm rich, it wouldn't have affected me if I just paid her, which is true, and that I'm letting my pride ruin my relationship with my sister. So, am I the a-hole? Not the a-hole. She was freeloading heavily, and the only thing you asked of her was to watch your kids for 2 hours once, and she couldn't be bothered because she didn't want to waste her weekend watching your kids. And then she says she'll do it if you pay her. You did right to kick her out. She was extremely ungrateful and completely took your hospitality for granted. She's the a-hole, not you. Not the a-hole. Someone who takes everything from you with no gratitude, then refuses to help in an emergency, is a total entitled a-hole. Your kids aren't even that young. Babysitting for a couple hours shouldn't be a huge burden. In fact, you could easily have made it a requirement of her living with you rent-free. She doesn't deserve your support. Not the a-hole. Why are you continuing to pay for her education? This is what happens when somebody is spoiled beyond belief. They become entitled, self-centered a-holes. Your sister said she has no obligation. Well, neither do you, and she needs to know that. I, 25 female, have an average paying job, doing body piercing so earn enough to live off. My friend, Lottie, 24 female, who I had been friends with since I was little, did not come from a financially fortunate family and has no job. Extra info: no disabilities, mental disorders, or anything at all to stop her working. Plus, she has a public transport pass. So ever since I got a job, 16 years old, I supported her financially, treating her to meals and trying to help her avoid takeaways from her well-being. I even paid clothes for her when she was 18. I paid for 1/4 of her apartment rent and hair salon appointments. Keep in mind, she is on government benefits. This continued, which is absolutely fine, and she always told me she liked the unemployed life as the reason she didn't work. All was okay until I officially started making more money. 21 years old. I began treating her to more designer clothes and shoes, but nothing like Gucci or Chanel, as a treat for being a good friend. She began to meet a few friends, whom of which never knew her financial situation, I presume, and would only wear her best designer clothes around them, and high heels plus jewelry. I was happy she was wearing them confidently. She started to ask to bring her friends over to my house a lot. I do not know these people, met a few times but not introduced properly, and I was okay with that as I know she was a bit insecure, until it became every single week. One night, she asked to throw a quiet casual gathering at my house while I was at my boyfriend's, which I was entirely fine with. Well, what do I come back to? Beer bottles everywhere, my stuff thrown about the place, my cats scared, my clothes ripped, and multiple of my practice piercing ears ripped. There were even used tampons in the bathroom floor, and vomit was everywhere. I collected my cats and briefly went to my bedroom, which thank goodness had a lock, whilst waiting for everyone to leave. I heard Lottie and her friend talk. Lottie was talking about how she was grateful that her friends came to her house and that Lottie was making £60,000 a year. She said something along the lines of, "Yes, if you ever need any designer, let me know and I'll buy you some." And that's how I found out all the designer clothes she didn't wear that I bought her were given to her friends. All have jobs. So when everyone left, I was furious. I stormed at her and shouted, Give me my stuff back and get a effing job. I will not be supplying for you at all, and I want my stuff back. You're an adult and grown up enough to stop acting like I'm your mummy." She refused to give me my stuff back, so I told her if she didn't give me my stuff back, I would tell her friends about it all. So she obliged and started acting the victim by saying, "But I don't want to work." So I told her to get out, and she did. I spent 3 hours cleaning my place, and 2 weeks later, I'm still friends with her, but getting calls from her begging to have money. Everyone in my life thinks I'm an a-hole for this. Update. We aren't friends anymore. Not the a-hole, but girl, if you can go to therapy, because I think it will help you unpack why you let this woman ride your back for so long. What the duck did I just read? Everyone sucks here. She's the a-hole for obviously taking advantage of you for years. You're the a-hole for allowing it. You enabled her. Not the a-hole. She's a lifelong mooch and not your friend. You have no responsibility for her life and financial situation. You never did. Of course she likes the unemployed life and doesn't want to work. She's getting a free ride off the government and your hard work. I will say you kind of set yourself up for this by feeding into her mooching behavior since childhood. But you're both adults now, and able-bodied adults have to work whether we want to or not. That's just life. You really would be doing yourself a favor to cut her, and anyone else who doesn't see what an ungrateful leech she is, out of your life, and find better friends who truly appreciate when you decide to treat them, and don't just constantly have their palms out for your money. My mom and I do not have a good relationship. We used to be close, but she always wanted me to be perfect. She liked to control every aspect of my life, especially my love life. She introduced me to my ex-girlfriend, Kim, and pushed us together. Kim and I dated for a few years and had a child together, which I now have primary custody over. Though my mom wanted our relationship to be perfect, it was far from it. The years I spent with Kim was the worst years of my life, and I'm much happier without her. My mom thought Kim was the perfect girl for me. She was so upset when we broke up and grew angrier when I got together with my wife, Rosa. Rosa is an amazing woman, but my mom refuses to get to know her because she's not Kim. I did not invite my mom to the wedding, and I do not speak to her often. About a week and a half ago, Rosa and I went to dinner at this fancy restaurant. The dinner was supposed to be a nice evening away from everything. In the middle of our date, my mom and Kim come up to us. It was awkward, but I assumed that they would say hello and then leave. My mom and Kim started to chat up Rosa. It was simple questions at first like, "How was work?" or "How was your family?" But even with those questions, I could tell that they weren't really listening. Their questions turned into passive-aggressive comments. My mom was saying, "You look so pretty, dressed like you are single. She's not dressed appropriately for a married woman." Or, "It must have taken you hours to look half decent." I thought it was mean for no reason. Rosa wasn't offended, but rather taken aback with how they were acting. She was, rather politely, asking them to leave us alone, but they were not understanding. My mom told Rosa that she couldn't leave us alone because, as a woman, she knew that Rosa needed protection, seeing as she was dressed like a hooker. Kim laughed and agreed with my mom. I was frustrated. They had interrupted us, only to be rude and insult my wife. In frustration, I told them to get the duck out of my face and to never contact me ever again. They left, cursing me out under their breath. We had tried to enjoy the rest of our night, but my mom and Kim had dampened our celebrations. My mom and Kim are still mad at me and want me to apologize. Rosa does not want me to do anything I don't want to, but thinks that this may affect Kim and I's co-parenting situation. Not the a-hole. Good for you for standing up and protecting your wife. I don't think you owe anyone an apology. I think they owe both of you an apology. However, I would try not to escalate the situation since there is a child involved, as your ex could make it very hard on you. Not the a-hole. You owe no apologies, and while Kim is undeniably the mother of your child, I'm pretty sure that that kind of stalking would affect the co-parenting thing, and not in her favor. Also, tell your mom that if she likes Kim so much, why doesn't she marry her? Solves everyone's problems. Not the a-hole. Rosa might be right about pending issues. I strongly recommend keeping notes about everything and recording all calls between you or Rosa and your mom or Kim. In the future, ask the waitstaff or manager to get them away from you. My son was born on my mom's birthday, and I knew from day one it was going to turn into an ugly crap show. My wife felt strongly that our son should not have to share his birthday, and that children come first. I agreed that I would not be prioritizing my mom over my son on his birthday, but without my consent, my wife told my mom that in a rather aggressive fashion, and my mom said she didn't care, but we better not guilt her for not being available on that day. This has led to a Cold War filled with silent judgment. For his first birthday, my mom did make a brief appearance, but that was it. He is now 6, and every year I feel like everyone hates everyone. My wife makes snarky comments about my mom for celebrating on the day and/or the following Saturday. My sister and her fiance are cold to me. Last year, there was a blow-up because my mom's husband wanted a logical explanation as to why I couldn't hang out with them when my son was sleeping. I couldn't really rationalize it, so he called me a bunch of names and hung up on me. It is almost their shared birthday, but this one is a big one for my mom, 50, and I really want to be there. I talked to my mom and asked if she would consider moving the date so that I could be there. She told me I was rude, and who even asks that? I explained that my son has to come first, and he is a kid, so it is important that he feels special. My mom said he is my kid, that is my responsibility, and of course she isn't moving her party. I did get a tiny bit emotional about how much I miss her, and I never see her due to the bad blood with my wife. My mom said I was guilt-tripping her, and her birthday isn't about me. She left in a bad mood, and now everyone is furious with me. I've been called sexist. They think I think she should put the kid first because that's what women do. I never said that. Selfish, egomaniac, whipped. I did not think she would take the conversation this badly. Yes, the a-hole. Impossible to know exactly how this started, but from your wording, it sounds like your wife caused all of this because she wanted your child's birthday to be only his. It's not. No birthdays are only one person's day. I am shocked you all didn't think it was awesome and just share the ducking day. What is wrong with you all? Why are you making this a problem? It could have been a fun day for everyone, or a fun 2 days over a couple of weeks, but you and your wife turned it into a childish contest. Yes, the a-hole. Don't be surprised when people cut you off. Why should they be flexible when you are myopically focused on some ridiculous power play? I, 23 female, told my sister, 26 female, that it was not my fault she is still poor. My sister and I have always had a rocky relationship. I love her and I know she loves me, but we have always gone about things differently. When she was 17, she dropped out of high school, has not gotten her GED or finished. She thought she was going to marry the guy who told her not to worry about money. They split up, and she found a minimum wage job and moved into a new apartment. She has since then gotten married to someone who has a child from a previous relationship. I took a different path. I finished high school and received my bachelor's degree. In college, I met my husband, who is now an engineer. Together, we make a sizable income that allows us to be more comfortable. We have only begun in our careers, but from the day my husband announced him finding his well-paying job, it has only gotten worse. One day, we are celebrating my brother's birthday, and my family asks my husband how his job is. He mentions some new things he is learning, tells them about his promotion. My family congratulated him, and we then announced that I had too found a job as a teacher at an elementary school. Once again, my parents and brother are telling us good job and saying how proud they are of us. My sister begins to make a face, and I ask her what's wrong. She said that I am always getting attention and it annoys her. I say I am sorry and go about the evening without mentioning anything again. My parents say they are so happy to have one of their kids graduate as a first-generation college student. My sister rolls her eyes and says she could study something as easy as education too. I simply say, I think you definitely could. I meant it too. I think she is smart, capable, and know she is a determined person. Later that evening, my parents began asking about paying off student loans or if we will buy a house first. During this, my sister has an outburst and said, "This happens every time you are here. They only want to hear about you. The only reason you can think about houses anyways is because you live off your husband's money." I live an hour and a half away from my family. She lives 6 minutes from mom. To me, it felt like she always had the attention. She gave the first grandkid. They have frequent dinners together. It was enough to set me off. Without thinking, I say, I do not get all the attention. You just can't stand when someone else is doing better than you. It is not my fault I chose education and you chose to be poor. I felt guilty as soon as I said it, but I have also been tired of her mentioning how I act better than her because I have a degree and make more money when I have never done so or said it. Am I actually the a-hole here? Everyone sucks here. No one chooses to be poor. Your sister made a bad decision when she was a teen, and she's dealing with the consequences. You were hitting below the belt, and I think you know it. On the flip side, it sounds like your sister's mad that she's dealing with the consequences of her actions and taking a bit of that frustration and jealousy out on you, probably because to her, your life looks incredibly cushy and out of reach. Harsh, but not unfair. She's bitter about her poor life choices and wants a patsy to pin the blame on, not the a-hole. Not the a-hole. Your sister is digging at you because she's jealous. She can still get her GED and get a college degree if she wants, which it seems she might want to do. She should figure that out and stop lashing out.